Liberals in the media are really angry that Donald Trump refuses to condemn violence on the conservative side of the political aisle because, they're so guilty of assassinations and murders and rioting and arson. And yeah, see, I don't quite get it either. We're going to show you Joe and Mika going absolutely nuts because Donald Trump refuses to play their game. By the way, a demand that they never made on Joe Biden. You remember when he blamed MAGA conservatives for being a threat, an existential threat to our Constitution. Hey, if Donald Trump wins the election and the MAGA Republicans have their way, we're never going to have another election in this country. Do you remember Joe and Mika demanding that Joe Biden tamp down his political rhetoric? Yeah, I don't remember that either. We'll show you what they had to say this morning coming up in a bit. But first, here's President Trump speaking unequivocally about the fact that there is a vast network of left-wing, well-funded groups that are fanning the flames of political discord in this country, and he's had enough, and he's going to investigate them.
Do you plan on investigating?
We'll see. We'll be announcing. They're already under investigation. They're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left.
They're already under
Already under investigation.
They're already under investigation. Joe and Mika very upset about that because, well, let's face it, they've probably been exchanging text messages and emails with all those various people who are under investigation right now.
I'd love to get your final thoughts as we talk about again and have this morning about the cycle of political violence that has just hurt so many people. Of course, the Kirks, immeasurable pain, the Hortmans assassinated in their home in Minnesota, the Pelosi's, the Scalise's. How does it stop? When does it stop?
It stops when we're all committed to help to stop it. And I think that as we go through the memorial services this week, I would hope the president and others set a high moral tone that we have to stop the violence. And I hope people are on my side of thinking of things would respect the mourning of a family that should never have lost their loved one. You mentioned earlier how I was stabbed once. I went and visited the guy that stabbed me in jail. He did 9 years in jail. And he said, I can't believe you're doing this for me. I said, no, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. We have to learn to be above it and take sometimes painful steps to show that we are not going to become like what we're fighting.
Love your friends, love your enemies. And as Jesus tells us, pray for those who persecute you. And that's certainly what you did, Rev. Jonathan, today, what do we expect the president's day to look like?
Well, as Rev said, and well said, Rev, we also look to our leaders right now for notes of unity, not division, that people hopefully will stop rushing to pass judgment and point fingers at the other. There's still so much we don't know about this particular case, but even in a bigger picture, you'd hope cooler heads could prevail. Let's hope they do at the White House. The president does have an event this afternoon. He's got two events where he'll be in front of the cameras. He undoubtedly will field questions about the Charlie Kirk matter. I think we'll all be waiting to see what he says and what the White House would look to do going forward.
That does it for us this morning.
Yeah, it does it for you, all right. The Rev, they're so happy that the Rev brought his biblical homily to the table. We're real fast on Reverend Al Sharpton. What church does he belong to again? But where is he a reverend? Okay, can I see his sermon, please? Can someone send me a link? Has he ever had a church? I'm pretty sure he's a street preacher. A two-bit charlatan thug who, by the way, was found guilty of defamation of a county prosecutor in New York for falsely claiming that he had raped and kidnapped Tawana Brawley. The entire thing was a hoax, but Al Sharpton fanned the flame of racial division in the 80s and 90s in New York City. He was single-handedly responsible for the Crown Heights riot, as well as a riot in Harlem where people were, the stores were looted and people were injured. I believe in the Crown Heights riot, forgive me if I'm wrong, people lost their lives. He was leading the charge in all of those race riots, and now he's going to be the sanctimonious elder statesman on MSNBC trying to lecture all of us to tamp down the rhetoric. See, when you're MSNBC, you have to turn to Al Sharpton to explain how we got here. And he's the wise old man on the mountain now saying, guys, hey, everyone just calm down and take a breath. You see, but you do that when you're guilty, when you know you're guilty and you don't want to admit your guilt. You see, we on the right, we conservatives right now, as we talk about political violence in America, there's a big difference between us and those on the political left. We have a corpse. We have a dead body. It's been less than a week since he was murdered in front of all of us. He was murdered for being conservative. He was murdered for being an outspoken conservative. He was murdered for speaking his mind. And what was this equivocation that Joe Scarborough tried to employ here?
Again, and have this morning about the cycle of political violence that has just hurt so many people. Of course, the Kirks, immeasurable pain, the Hortmans,
the Hortmans, that is the former Speaker of the House in Minnesota, a Democrat who was murdered on her doorstep by a lunatic who said that Democrat Governor Tim Walz told him to do it. It was also right after she had voted with Republicans, and people on the left were angry at her because she had teamed up with Republicans to make cuts to the state Medicaid budget. But yeah, absolutely, it's the same thing as Charlie Kirk. What else you got there, Joe?
assassinated in their home in Minnesota, the Pelosi's.
The Pelosi's, yeah. Mr. Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, whose home was invaded by a nutbag with a Black Lives Matter sign outside of his home, where he hit Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer, not for any political reason that we're aware of at this moment. It's never come out in any of the judicial proceedings for that nutbag. But sure. It's the same thing, Joe.
Scalise's.
Yeah, the Scalise's. That would be the current majority leader in the House of Representatives when he was gunned down at a baseball field with other Republicans by a guy who was inspired by Bernie Sanders and Rachel Maddow. He gunned them down while they were practicing for the congressional baseball game, and he said that his motivation was political because Republicans in the House were going to be cutting the Affordable Care Act. That one you got right. That is a good comparison. Notice the pattern here? Who else you got, Joe?
How does it stop? When does it stop?
Oh, funny how he forgot one other act of violence that's happened recently. That would be the attempted assassination twice now of Donald Trump. Why would you leave that out as you were giving us the litany of political violence? Do you see how it's not really an equal playing field here? But they're doing their best. They gotta, and they're so pissed off at Donald Trump because he didn't stand before the American people and try to heal us at this moment of political discord, you know, like Joe Biden did.
By Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans quote a clear and present danger to our democracy.
Yeah, if only Donald Trump were a unifier and a healer and led us out of these trying times the way Joe Biden did with his good-natured unifying language. These people are hypocrites. But on MSNBC, it just continued all weekend long.
Then, on the other hand, he's saying things like this, telling NBC News, we are dealing with a radical left group of lunatics, and they don't play fair, and they never did. Is the president doing anything to help the nation heal, or is he just fanning the flames?
Well, it's not his nature to be a unifier. That's not the way he has practiced politics. Look, most presidents at some point or another practice the politics of division, but typically in a national crisis, at a moment when people are so on edge, when something terrible has happened like this, the traditional playbook for a president is to try to calm the waters, to try to bring people together, to talk about our shared interests rather than to inflame the passions and the anger that are already out there. Look, this is a president who's personally upset about this, right? Let's keep that that in mind, Charlie Kirk was a friend of his sons, a friends of J.D. Vance. People in this White House are personally aggrieved and upset and angry, and the anger is coming out, I think, in his public statements. But it's a very different approach than other presidents have taken in this kind of a moment. And the question is, when you talk about radical left lunatics, first of all, you ignore the fact that there's violence across the spectrum. There are, of course, people from the right and the left. You also assume things about this particular shooting that we don't necessarily know 100% yet.
Yes, we do. And I'm sick of this. Oh, there's violence. Of course, there's violence on both sides, but it's not symmetrical violence. It's not equal on both sides. We'll get to that a little later in the show. But this whole idea that a president, past presidents have always translated, well, I just showed you the most recent president and how he behaved himself in unifying our nation. What about Barack Obama? And anytime there was a school shooting in this country, he would grandstand and demonize his political opponents for political advantage while making no concrete contributions to the political discourse. He made it sound like we were in favor of children being slaughtered in their schools. And if you remember right, during the initial concerns about systematic racism in our country, when Black Lives Matter first began, he fanned the flames of that rather than saying, no, we're not a racist country. After all, I'm a black man and I was elected president twice in this country. No. He refused to say that. He would double down and reinforce the idea that we were a racist nation. You remember when the Cambridge police detained a Harvard professor, Lewis Gates, Barack Obama's professor, detained him because there were reports in the neighborhood that was a break-in at Lewis Gates's house. Lewis Gates had lost his key and tried to get into the house. So the cops get there, do typical police protocol, and detained him until he could identify himself properly as the owner of the home. And what did Barack Obama say about that? He said the police acted stupidly. They had to have a beer summit to work it out so that we could all understand the racism in this country. That's how Barack Obama comported himself. Bill Clinton, by the way, doesn't get off the hook here either. After the Oklahoma City bombing, the domestic terror attack in Oklahoma City, Bill Clinton blamed Rush Limbaugh. So stop it with the, past presidents have always risen above the moment to try to bring us together and heal us. No. Democrats have demonized Republicans for political advantage. And there is a big difference here with Donald Trump. Yes, it's true. Charlie Kirk was a personal friend of his and friends of his family. But there's more than that they keep forgetting, that is completely missing from all of the coverage on how Donald Trump has reacted to this assassination of Charlie Kirk. And that is that he himself was just a target of assassination attempts a year ago, with a bullet that missed his skull by this much. And the fact that that doesn't factor into this conversation in any way whatsoever is mind-boggling to me. Trump was then asked about celebrations of this assassination here at home and also abroad.
Have you asked to start revoking the visas of the foreigners who have celebrated Charlie Kirk's death?
No, we haven't, but we are looking at names. We don't like that. That's not right. We wouldn't celebrate if something happened on their side, and we don't. These are sick people. These are really deranged people.
Yeah, that's telling it like it is, and I appreciate him doing that. Marco Rubio reflected on the events of the weekend as well.
We should not be giving visas to people who are going to come to the United States and do things like celebrate the murder, the execution, the assassination of a political figure. We should not. And if they're already here, we should be revoking their visa. Why would we want to bring people into our country that are going to engage in negative and destructive behavior?
That's right. And by the way, for all of the idiots out there who are saying, well, that's not free speech, why you should allow people to have, first of all, if you're in a foreign country and you're trying to petition to become a green card holder in this country, you have no presumption of free speech before you come here. Everything that you have said and done is worthy of scrutiny before we decide to open up our arms and welcome you into our nation. And if we've already welcomed you, there's a big difference between exercising free speech and glorifying murder. Glorifying and celebrating the assassination of a political figure in America. Sorry, That's not free speech. And Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, is absolutely right to scrutinize that. All right. About 3 hours ago, Director Kash Patel appeared on Fox and Friends and revealed some more about what we've learned during the investigation. And there were a few bombshells I want to share with you.
We flexed all resources the FBI had and surged multiple air assets as soon as this shooting occurred. We were cycling in agents, evidence response technicians, hostage rescue technicians, and special operators in and out of Utah, cycling evidence back and forth on these FBI planes as soon as we could so that there was no delay. And what we did once I got there, along with the deputy on the ground around 5 p.m. local on September 11th, was walk the entire crime scene, including the foots the suspect himself took. And what we learned was there was evidence, DNA evidence that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. It's important. I'll get back to that later. I even walked into the wooded area in the ravine, so I knew from my investigative experience what I could bring to the table and what decisions I needed to make. And having the support of President Trump and the full support of the White House was what we needed for these resources to happen. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
All right, so that's huge. They've now got DNA evidence linking the suspect to the crime scene and to the towel that was wrapped around the weapon that was used to murder Charlie Kirk. Excuse me. Now, Kash Patel also revealed some information about a note, apparently, that was destroyed or attempted to be destroyed, that had details tantamount to a confession here.
Written note? Did he write a written note before the assassination attempt? That's what the governor said yesterday. And what did that say? If you could.
So what I'm able to say. I'm sorry. So what I'm able to say is I addressed it partially earlier, is that the written note, we believe, what did exist, and we have evidence to show what was in that note, which is, and I'm going to summarize, basically saying the suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
There you go. All right. That's kind of a big bombshell as well. There's also information now about a Discord group that this person and his roommate partner, who has now been identified as a man who was attempting to go through the biological or chemical process of changing his makeup to appear to be a woman through pharmaceuticals and potentially through surgical procedures to, display the outward appearance of being a woman. I refuse to say transitioning at this point anymore because it's, a biological impossibility. You're a man or you're a woman. You don't transition from one to the other. You can just do whatever you can extraordinarily to change your appearance, but you're still what you are. That said, apparently these two belonged to an online Discord group that, I'll let Kash Patel take it from here.
But this is a great point. I want to lay out how this works. People think we can just get in these group chats and immediately find out who's in them. We, the FBI, are the investigatory body supporting multiple prosecutions and ongoing investigations. And that's another point. Our investigation at the FBI is ongoing. And there are scores of people in this Discord chat room, but we have to effectuate legal process. We have to go out there with search warrants so that if prosecutors want to later use this evidence, it's not tainted by being illegally obtained. We, the FBI, are running the investigation pointedly on the Discord chat group. There are scores of individuals that are going to be spoken to. There are also lots of family members and friends that have already been spoken to. And one more point on forensics. We were able to obtain in record time the text message chain between the suspect and his live-in partner, as well as other critical cellular information from our CAS team that analyzes cell phone data towers in the area to pinpoint the locations of the suspect and other individuals he was speaking with. This is critical information that the FBI processed and got to prosecutors so they can lawfully use it in a court of law. And our investigation, our interviews continue, but we've learned some shocking things when we spoke to his family and friends as well.
Yeah, and a little bit more on what the family has revealed here. There has been a lot of misinformation and disinformation reported in the media and in little left-wing corners of the blogosphere. And it's working, by the way. I can tell you that I looked at my Facebook, my personal Facebook page, and I have a lot of liberal friends from my old days in the entertainment business. And they are all convinced that this murderer is a white Christian conservative Republican who was influenced to murder Charlie Kirk because he wasn't conservative enough, because of the disinformation that is out there. We'll get into more details of the disinformation and misinformation, because the left is dying to tell you that the main threat in America is white Christian conservative males. And this guy is just another one of them. It just turns out this time he killed another conservative. That's their narrative. But Patel this morning confirmed multiple times now, there is no denying the fact that this murderer, this assassin, was politically motivated, and he was politically motivated because he had turned to radical left-wing politics. Say it again. This person was is still a radical left-winger, and was motivated by those politics to murder Charlie Kirk out of hate, out of political hate, fomented by the echo chamber on the internet, supporting the idea that Charlie Kirk and Trump and you and I are fascists who need to be silenced. Say it over and over and over again, because the left-wing echo chamber, amplified by legitimate publications and broadcast platforms, continue to either wring their hands saying, well, we're still not sure what the motive was here, or they're outright lying and saying, well, actually, he was a right-winger. It is dumbfounding, but it is true. That's what they're saying. We're used to them lying, but not this egregiously, I'll be honest with you. Not when the evidence is so obvious. And here's Patel setting the record straight this morning.
My job as FBI director is not to speak to motive, is to speak to the facts. And that's what I'm going to do. His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and even more so in these last couple of years. And he had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for. Those are factually accurate investigatory findings by the FBI that we've handed over to the local authorities and the federal authorities to make their prosecutorial decisions.
All right. And just a little bit of a 1-2 punch here from the FBI, as Deputy Director Dan Bongino also had an appearance this morning on Fox News.
There appear to have been multiple warning signs. You just laid out some of them. There were people in his network, friends and family, who had stated that he had become more political, that he had become, at some parts, I believe some of his coworkers had stated that he had kind of detached himself when the topic of politics came up and walked away from them. Family members said he'd become more political, leading us to believe that this ideology had infected him and had taken over. And he was just intent, it appears, from the data we've accumulated and the channel and that note, which we have some evidence may have existed before based on the communications in that channel, that his target was obviously going to be Charlie, and that people knew in advance. The question is, again, I just want to go back to what you had asked before. Did they know? Were they sure of this? Or did they hear this and just write it off? That's what we're going to have to find out. And that's what we're investigating now. Bill, this investigation is just begun. This isn't even the beginning of the beginning. You know, yes, we have a subject in custody. You know, everybody's innocent until proven guilty in our constitutional republic. However, this is not done by any stretch. Our men and women out there in the Bureau have worked tirelessly all week. And I just got back to D.C. Last night. And, Cash and I were out there on the scene. We walked the scene. We went through every single component of it. We saw the evidence up close and personal. And we went out there to be able to make command decisions with our team on the ground. And I think the process, although not perfect, of course, I think the process went pretty well, considering we got him in 33 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Deputy Director Bongino. And I got to say, I mean, I, I tell it like it is here as much as I can, but you know my political perspective and where I'm coming from. As I see Deputy Director Bongino and earlier this morning, Director Patel, I'm dumbfounded as to some of the criticism. People on the right and conservatives that were somewhat critical of Kash Patel and the FBI's handling of this. I mean, they started moments after this murder. They had nothing to work on. They had one very grainy piece of security footage of a figure running across a rooftop. And from there, they were able to sort of retrace the footsteps, the exit, the route that this person took. They traced it into the woods. They found the weapon. They were able to find some images and photos that they enhanced and put out there. And they got the parents to, to turn him in because they put the picture out there as quickly as they did. And it seems to me that you turn around an investigation like this in 36 hours and you have the suspect in hand. Yes, there was cooperation from local police and there was certainly cooperation from the family. Think about the father, as we mentioned. We talked about this with Chris DeGaulle on Friday's show. The moral courage and clarity for this father to be able to turn in his own son, knowing that he was guilty of this horrific crime. And I know that we all like to think Monday morning quarterbacking that we would do that as well, but that's not an easy thing to do. I'd like to think that I would do that with my son, but at the same time, I'd be horrified and it would destroy me to have to turn in my own son for such a horrible crime. These are complicated issues morally and ethically. And it seems to me the FBI and law enforcement locally did a hell of a job to be able to bring this guy in as quickly as they did. I'm no expert, but it just seems that way. That's where things stand right now. Clear the record up, though. This is not a both sides situation. This is not, there's horrible violence on both sides. We'll get into the details and show it to you in just a second. But the demands for President Trump to, in some way, transcend the reality on the ground right now and not speak out about what we see clearly happening in our country and clearly violence being okayed and authorized and celebrated on the left toward him and toward his friends and toward us. Well, I'm sorry. The president is doing exactly what he should be doing, telling the truth and confronting the evil that we're facing right now.